This is an open letter to Bill Maher. Um, I listen to your show all the time, and we appreciate you and we enjoy your show. And most of the time, uh, I agree with everything you say. But there are some times that you bring subjects up that uh, it doesn't seem fair to stay quiet, so we have to say something. Uh, Recently, you brought the subject of slavery. Brought up the subject of slavery, and you basically said your idea was because it's in the past, uh, we shouldn't apply presentism to it and say and try to judge what happened in the past by today's standards. Right, fine, I agree. We shouldn't judge the past by today's standards, but then you go on and say that, okay, what happened in the past from 1619 in Americas with slavery up to, I guess, 1919, which slavery really was still continuing somewhat until, at least World War One, when they needed the black people to fight in the war. But you said because it's in the past, this was 1619 started, and then you started comparing it to the other slave holders, the Sumerians and the Egyptians and the Greek and the Romans, and you said they're also in the past, and we held slaves in the past, so let's wash our hands and get done with it. What's past is the past, and we shouldn't judge people. But the reality is different, my friend Bill Maher. The reality is you did slavery up to a couple of 100 years ago, up to 100 years ago, 150 years ago, you still owned slaves. The Sumerians, their civilization that held some slaves was 5 to 6,000 year BC. That makes it like 7 to 8,000 years ago. The Egyptians were holding slaves 4 to 5,000 years ago. Between 4 and 5,000 years ago. That's 3,000 to 4,000 BC. The Greek was holding slaves 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. The Romans, 1,000 years ago, 2,000, between the 1,000 years ago and 2,000 years ago, they held slaves. And none of these held slaves 200 years ago. None of these held slaves 150 years ago. This whole idea is that, oh, they're in the past since they held slaves and we held slaves, so that's a washout. No, it's not a washout, because it is different. People having slaves 5,000 years ago based on the morals of that time, and people having slaves 300 years ago, it's very different. 300 years ago, most of these civilizations that you mentioned, 300 years ago, they all had recognized that owning slaves is a bad idea. If it talks like me and it walks like me, I can't, bind them. You're comparing your recent actions to the actions of, people living thousands of years ago, and on top of that, at the same time that you're proclaiming yourself, and you are proclaiming yourself as the apex of civility. I mean, you either can't say we are the most civilized, we are the apex of civility, and we are so good and we are so fine, or you can have slaves. You can't have it both ways. This whole idea that, oh, they had slaves and we had slaves and that's fine. No, they had slaves 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. You had slaves 200 years ago. You were still continuing with this business of slavery 200 years ago. So just because by saying it's in the past, so it's a washout, no, it doesn't work like that. They're both in the past, yes, but those other civilizations, they washed their hands of it way back when. But the European pinkskins continued way into the 19th century, up to 100 years ago. The European pinkskins inside Africa and outside of Africa, they continued promoting and practicing slavery. And yes, you said yes, the Africans were catching slaves and bringing and selling it to the white people. They accused the Africans of owning their own slaves. No. Slavery in Africa is much like ivory business. If there is a market for it, yes, they kill elephants and they take their ivory to sell it. Because there is a market for it that was not created by them, but in this case, in the case of the ivory, by the yellow skins of China. In case of slavery, because the pink skin had created the market for it, has created demand for it, and were willing to pay money for it, that is what persuaded some, morally questionable individuals to participate and go catch some slave to sell it in order to make money. Just like, some morally questionable people are, going and killing elephants to bring the ivory to sell it. The pink skins created the market. Unless there is a market, there won't be those unsavory individuals who do the act of either killing elephants for their ivory or enslaving black people from Central Africa to bring them to the coast to sell them. If the Europeans created demand, yes, they will. You find some people, unsavory individuals to do it, but not if there is no demand. Again, you are conflicting your own sin and with the sins of others. You're saying that, oh, they did it. No, they did it because you were buying it. You were paying money for it. And when you're paying money for it, for something, you can always find, some people who will sell their own mothers to, make money. Even that. So again, your sin caused other people's to sin. That doesn't justify your sin. Your sin happened up to a couple of 100 years ago, and by saying that people from 6000 BC were holding slaves, therefore 100 years ago we held slave, that justifies it. No. Again, it doesn't. They learned, since they learned, you also could have learned. Not, continue because in the past they were doing it, we are going to do it as well. And the fact that Slavic people were being traded in Europe, yes, again, European pinkskins, you people are extra aggressive and extra paranoid and extra violent. So there is no doubt that Slavic people were in Europe were traded as slaves up to recently. Again, like the Africans were traded. This is an European issue, or people of European descent are more violent, more paranoid, more aggressive than the rest of the races put together. There was a funny thing I saw on Twitter that in right now, not in the past thousands of years ago, right now, the rivers are going down. There was in the news that rivers all around the world are going down because of global warming and blah blah blah. Okay, the rivers in America were going down, and it was in the news that they're finding unknown murder victims all over the rivers in the west and the east, here and there, unknown murder victims, and they're extracting their DNA to try to identify them. The rivers in Europe are going down, and they're finding, you know, sunken warships at the bottom of those rivers. Yeah, well, yeah, as we know where those warships come from. But then the rivers in Asia are going down, and at the bottom of those rivers, they are finding old historic statues of Buddha that was there, and you know, then water levels had come up, and they got submerged. And it was funny that this is how it is. People, wherever pink skins are, people of pink skin, European pink skin origin, you find things that is associated with violence with their civilization, violence and murder and war, and violence and murder and war. And in the East, in the old world, in Asia, you're finding they're finding not, you know, not murder with victims and not sunken warships, but they're finding fucking statues of Buddha representing peace and tranquility. It's clear what's going on, folks. Mr. Bill Maher, you cannot say we did it in the past and they did it in the past, so it's a washout. No, they did it in 6,000 years ago and you did it up to 100 years ago. It's not a washout. You still insist on doing it. Just like right now, you just keep invading territories that your European partners had invaded 300 years ago, and now NATO, the collection of these aggressive European pinkskins and North Americans, their North American cousins in this NATO collection, now they're attacking together. Let's go together and, you know, conquer them together. You're still doing colonialism, where in Asia they stopped doing colonialism 1,000 years ago. You see what I'm saying? It's like you are doing things that they were doing way back when. Now they're fucking calmed down, but you are doing it. Again, you cannot say that, no, don't bring it up. They were spilling blood and we are spilling blood, so that's a washout. No, it's not. It's like another example. It came up on Twitter that I mentioned that the British have the most blood on their hand, the most variety and the most volume of blood on their hand. And by volume I mean the number of people that the British have killed around the world, and by variety I mean that, you know, the British have killed Fijians and Tahitians and Filipinos and Indians and Nicaraguans and Hondurans and Panamans. So basically the British have the most variety of blood of different races on their hand. So then a British guy made a comment under my comment and said, no, the Mongols spilled more blood than us. Well, I rest my case. If you have to compare yourself to the Mongols, then I rest my case. If the British can only compare themselves and feel better about themselves by comparing themselves to the bloodthirsty Mongols, then I rest my case. My point is made. My case is made. You can't keep on going, my friend Bill Maher, saying that we are the most civilized, we are number one, we are the best, but they keep colonizing, keep attacking, you know, countries over different reasons. Oh, we were gonna bring you a better government, so we're gonna destroy half of your country and kill 2-3 million people, but believe me, it's worth it. You're gonna have better government. Fuck you. It's like you're doing empire building, you're doing colonialism today, but I guess the answer to it is that oh, because they did it in the past, then it's okay for us doing it today. That's a washout because they did it in the past. Exactly like slavery. And you mentioned, slavery has always been done. Even today, R. Kelly. Yes, R. Kelly was holding some slave girls, and he was breaking the law. But then Jeffrey Epstein was also holding some slave girls, and his clients, which included Trump, Clinton, and that British prince, were using those slave girls, and nothing has happened to them. Epstein killed himself, but there is a client list of his, and nothing has happened to those clients. So again, this idea that they used to do it, but we are doing it right now, so I guess it's a washout. No, it's not. You're still doing it. And you're not imposing the law evenly. You're still doing colonialism, you're still doing slavery. In prisons, go investigate, Mr. Bill Maher. In prisons right now in the United States, they're having slave labor. Basically, prisoners don't have anything else to do. They don't mind getting paid 50 cents a day. So they do the work. First they're imprisoning people, the most number of prisoners as proportion to the main population United States has. United States has the most number of prisoners in proportion to its population in the world, in planet Earth. And then they're using them as slave labor. So you're still doing it, but you're trying to wash it by saying that, oh, the Sumerians did it in between 5,000 and 6,000 BC. So in Alabama, we are holding some slaves. A couple of hundred slaves in Alabama are, making road signs. I guess it's okay because the Sumerians did it between 5,000 and 6,000 BC, before Christ. Are you serious? Then the issue of the transgenders. Okay. Funny thing about this matter that I get to that later. The issue about transgenders, that you made fun of it, that the idea is that Europeans, the Native Americans had worked out this issue, and they did recognize transgenders, and Europeans somehow, you were making fun of it, that Europeans somehow came and changed the system or imposed their own wills. That's actually correct, my friend Bill Maher. Indians of the redskin Indians, the natives of Americas, had this idea of there are people with two spirits. They call them people of two spirits. That is the idea of saying that yes, there are transgenders, that they are, born with the wrong equipment. They are female born with the male equipment, and there are males born with the female equipment. So there was the transgender idea. There was the transgender idea, and transgenders were non-binaries were given, were accepted to a degree in the society, given some kind of acceptance in their society, which we know Europeans coming over from Europe with these Abrahamic religions, who demanded conformity, total conformity, and didn't recognize any any non-conforming to their ideals of male and female, any non-conforming should be, anybody non-conforming should be burned at the stake. And that was their idea. Yes, you can say that the Europeans came over and imposed their non-negotiable, strict beliefs on genders on the whole land. And the same is true with Indians of subcontinent of India. They also have had some position. The society has had for thousands of years had accepted that there are transgender people, non-binary people, blah blah blah, and you know they are given some kind of status, not very high status, but some kind of recognition in their fucking society. For example, you know, they even invite them to dance at the weddings. You know, these people who are male and identifying as female. They're dancing their weddings as a, you know, as a good luck omen. They're not treated that well, but you know, they're not burned at the stake either, like the European pink skin used to do. But the funny part is that all these older traditions, older cultures, who did recognize all of this, were imposed upon by the European pink skin, going over there in Americas, in Asia, stating that they're superior and the locals are inferior, and the inferior locals who are supposedly less civilized have to follow the code of morality from Europe, and you know, have to get rid of all these, you know, kill the transgender and kill this and kill that and burn them all at the stake. So yes, you see, Mr. Bill Maher, the main problem here, as far as I can see, is not that you did it in the past and therefore it's in the past and it's, so I guess, okay because other people have done it in the past. No, the main problem is you did it in the past, and at the same time that you try to impose your will upon other people. For example, right now that you have recognized the, you know, the rainbow colors of the non-binary people, now you're trying to impose your system, your government, the pink skins are trying to impose their understanding on other people of all over the planet Earth. Sort of like until yesterday, you didn't, the pink skins, European pink skins in general, let's call them NATO, in general didn't recognize gays and transgenders and this and that and the other, didn't recognize them, so that was all fine. They recommended everybody all over the planet Earth they should burn them at the stake, just like, you know, they did their own. So famously the British Mr. Turing, who was gay, was, you know, outcasted until he killed himself, outcasted from the British society right after World War II. We are talking about 50 years ago. So until the point that the pink skins change their path, everybody should follow their path. Their will, they want to impose their will, the pink skins, European pink skins, along with their cousins in North America, want to impose their will to the planet Earth, to the whole of planet Earth. We don't recognize gays, so you shouldn't recognize gays. Okay, fine. But now the moment, or after a decade, that they finally come around and they do recognize gays, which is what the Indians of North America and Indians of India and many other cultures had recognized for thousands of years, but you know, nobody paid attention to them. But now that the pink skins have recognized, suddenly everybody else on this planet also have to recognize, or else they're evil. and they should be attacked and they should be demolished under the pretext of, you know, these are the bad guys, because now we recognize gay people, and since these guys don't accept gay people, so now they're enemy, we should attack them. This is the problem. The problem is that once you recognize or don't recognize something, you expect everybody in the world to bend to your will. Here's the thing, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this idea that whatever you do, you pinkskins do, you want to impose your will upon others, pretending that what you're doing is the right way to do it. Whether you're against transgenders or gays, you at that time you wanted to impose your will and expected everybody to be against them. Now that you are for them, now you want to impose your will and, you know, tell everybody that everybody else on this planet, on the planet Earth, should be for them, or else, you know, you're gonna beat them with a big stick. The imposing of the will is the problem. The being holier than thou is the problem that the pinkskins have, and they are enforcing it through the mighty power of NATO. Okay, some parts of this fucking planet, they don't recognize these genders. You don't need to impose your will on them. Just accept their gays into your society and say, hey, come on over. Your country doesn't accept you. You come over, you live over here. We accept you. But this whole idea that, oh, you don't have democracy, so we're going to come over there, invade you, kick your ass, kill 2-3 million people, so you can have democracy because we approve of democracy. Well, fuck you. Democracy has worked for you. If you ask many people, including me, democracy hasn't even worked for the West. Democracy is a very, you know, very iffy situation. It's a very, very delicate. Democracy has a very delicate balance. Not good for many places in the world. Good for very few places in the world that can impose this delicate balance, and the populace are intelligent enough and sophisticated enough to understand the delicate balance in a democracy. But most people in the world are not intelligent enough to understand that it's a balance. They either fall one way or the other. So, but the whole idea of imposing your will upon other people, while at the same time you're still doing your thing. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, but none of his clients, Trump, Clinton, or that British prince, none of them faced justice, although they were using slave sex, enslaved people for sex, enslaved minors for sex. Nothing happened. And you keep comparing this, well, I guess this is also comparable to what's in the fucking Bible. Oh, Moses had slave sex, had sex with his slaves, so I guess Clinton is fine having sex with Mr. Epstein's slaves. You see where I'm going with this? You keep advocating things that you don't even execute. It's like it's a joke. It's the hypocrisy of it. You don't believe in things, and then once you do believe in them, you say you do believe in them, but then you expect everybody else on planet Earth to bend to your will and fall and do as you expect them to do, believe in exactly as you believe in, but then it turns out that you didn't even believe it, and you still have sex in the prisons and in your sex trade and in the prisons. You still don't believe in slavery is wrong. At the core of it, you still don't believe slavery is wrong. Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. Bill Maher, you can't say they did it, so we do it too. We did it too, and but we are not doing it right now because, frankly, you're doing it right now, but under a different pretext. You don't call it slavery. You're forcing people. You're imprisoning people for very on very flimsy ground, and then using those people to work for pennies, and then you still have your slave girls, slave sex, and not only Jeffrey Epstein situation. You just go to Las Vegas, and these are all flesh for sale, and it's the same thing as the Bible, but Bible was from 2,000 years ago, and today you have this situation. You still have it today, but you're pretending that no, we solved all those problems. You're still believe in empire. You're still invading, but then you justify it because 2,000 years ago they were building empires, so we are building one now.